Ask Me Anything by Reddit for life. I know I said we need to reach 5 likes for a part 2, but this was already half made, and I couldn't be asked making another, so enjoy, and make sure to like, comment and sub. Serious people who have lived on a supposedly haunted house, what was your scariest supernatural encounter? What was it like? I lived in a house that was built in the 1950s and didn't seem to be very updated. The house I don't think was haunted, but the detached garage sure as hell was. My buddy and I had a gaming setup out there. Keep in mind this garage is super messy. We had a couch and a TV with my PS2 in the middle of the mess. One night while we were playing games I heard a woman talking and her 3 kids running around laughing at 3 AM. I looked over at my friend and he was like, WTF was that? We both just kind of convinced ourselves that it must have been from the game. So we continued to play. Pretty soon we heard it again. So I paused the game and we both listened. Didn't hear anything for a good 2 minutes. Sure enough we hear the lady talking to her kids and all of them laughing again. We both freaked out because who in the world would be out at 3 AM next to our garage with their kids? So we both had to crawl over all the crap in the garage to see who it is. When we opened up the door nobody was there. We both sprinted back inside the house and checked periodically for anyone outside. A couple days or so goes by. I was bored and my friend was busy at the time, so I decided to go out into the garage by myself to play games. Sure enough I hear the same thing again with the kids and the mom, but this time the door started shaking. I immediately froze. Then there was hard banging on the door. At this point my body went into fight or flight mode. I always told myself that if I was ever caught in a supernatural situation I wouldn't try to be sneaky. If this thing wants to kill me it better do it right now. So I jumped out from the couch, leaped over all the crap in the garage, and sprinted towards that door blasting through it. I sprinted towards the house without looking anywhere around me. When I made it through the door I vowed to never go out into that garage again during late hours. Oh, and when I went inside I realized I stepped on a nail. My adrenaline was pumping so hard I didn't even feel it. All these events happened at my dad's house. He still lives there, bless him. I moved in while I was in my early mid-20s. He was military and going to be gone for a year, so I got a job up there and lived in his house, but moved up a few months before he left. At first, I really didn't have too many bad experiences. It was new construction. He was the first to live in it. We were in a subdivision etc, so not the classic haunted house trope. Things started off super small and random. Shit I could easily brush off. Hearing knocks. Seeing odd shadows here and there. All fully explainable. One time the landline phone started beeping like someone had picked it up and started dialing. And when I walked over, the 6 button had randomly gotten stuck and was typing 666,666,666,666 etc. I don't really prescribe to Christian doctrine so this didn't bother me in the it's the mark of the beast way, but it was just another weird thing. So dad moved out, I'm living alone etc. Honestly despite it being my first time living completely alone, I wasn't that scared. We had an alarm system. My dad left a handgun in the house, and I had training on how to use it. Most of the neighbors were current and former military guys, and had been instructed to keep an eye out for me. I just mention that for context, that I wasn't overly paranoid or lost in my head with fear. So things ramp up a little bit. Sometimes it sounds like someone is walking around in the house even though I'm alone. Other times I'd be downstairs watching TV and hear a giant crash. The first few times I'd grab the gun and do a quick sweep upstairs, but I never saw anything, so after the first couple of times I legit just stopped checking. And honestly his office served as the catch-all for random boxes and was such a mess. If anything fell in there, good fucking luck figuring it out. One time I was walking down the stairs and swear it felt like someone shoved my shoulder, but again, I was living alone. And all these occurrences were benign enough and spread out enough that I wasn't living in fear or even thinking about this shit when it wasn't happening. My dad was able to come back a couple of weekends during the year to check up on the house and see how I was doing. A few of these times we'd both hear the crash upstairs. I tried to explain to him that it was nothing, but he'd always send me up to look. I'd go and report back that I had no idea. Other things would happen. I was usually a stickler for closing and locking the bathroom door when I showered, more habit from always living with people than anything else, but a few times I'd get out, and it would be wide open. Again, weird, but not something where the gut instinct was for me to pull out my town crier hat and start shouting haunting. My sister came up for spring break that year, and we had a sissy week. Not much happened while she was there, but one day I had to go to work and left her. She slept in and woke up to a terrible storm. Heavy rain, hail hitting the side of the house, etc. Not in any way terrifying. Random heavy storms were not at all uncommon where we were, and she didn't think anything of it other than like recognizing the fact a storm. Until she went downstairs where I'd opened the sliding glass door curtain, and it was sunshine and dry as a bone outside. No storm at all. Shit was weird, but we brushed it off as a dream or something. Things hit a turning point probably a month or so later. I was alone, late at night, upstairs in my bedroom. I always closed and locked my door, because my logic was, if someone does break in, that's one more obstacle for them to deal with, while I call the cops, etc. Well, that night I hear footsteps in the hall again. Except this time I'm upstairs with them, not downstairs. I legit just keep reading my book and refuse to acknowledge or check on it. It was that weird duality of okay, this house is fucking haunted and I've seen enough movies not to open the door and ghosts don't exist. This is all bullshit. I'm a logical person and will prove it by ignoring whatever that is to make my point. The noise continues like someone is just pacing up and down the hallway over and over. Literally this continued for over half an hour. I got super fucking frustrated and shouted out to shut up. Well, this pissed it off, because now it sounds like someone running up and down the hallway. I fucking freak. Start texting friends I know are awake. Turn on all the lights in my room. Went from proper reading to fall asleep to adrenaline in high gear. It kept going and going and going. I was just fucking terrified and knew that there was no way in hell I was opening that fucking door. I stayed up as long as I could and eventually passed out. When I woke up at 5, the sounds was gone but all my lights were on and I saw the texts on my phone, so I knew I hadn't dreamed it all up. Around 7:30 I have to leave my room and start getting ready for work. I go out and there's just nothing. Alarm is still on. No sign of a break-in. If it was a raccoon or other animal that got in, there was no sign of it or any damage. Just nothing. For what it's worth, someone did legitimately try and break into the house via the downstairs porch one night when I was watching TV. I wasn't half as terrified as I was the night this shit happened. Try to talk to my dad. He doesn't believe me at all. No surprise there. Nothing as big or as terrifying as that ever happened to me again while I was there, and I lived there for almost another year. Still would hear the crashing, the footsteps when we were downstairs, knocks, etc., but nothing like that, thank fuck. My dad thinks it's all a lark, and for a while would regale dinner guests with my beliefs about the house being haunted. I moved out of state eventually, would keep in touch with my dad. On the phone sometimes he'd complain about weird shit happening in the house. Crashes at night but nothing fallen. One time he was in the shower and heard such a loud crash and felt the ground shake that he got out and grabbed his handgun and did a sweep of the house, convinced someone else was there, but there was no one and nothing out of place. Occasionally guys he knew would be stopping through and need a place to crash. One was Catholic and slept in the room that I used to have and said he had such a horrible, terrified feeling that he barely slept that night. Just something overwhelmingly bad. Dad thought he was fucking joking, but the dude ate breakfast and left pretty quickly, and even when he'd come through town refused to stay at my dad's again. Another one was a super logical dude who I'm pretty sure was agnostic. He was with my dad downstairs when they heard a crash and my dad was just like, it's nothing, and kind of had to explain. Later that night old boy heard some knocks. Not enough to terrify him out of ever staying again, but like, two grown military guys who have both been in numerous combat zones telling my dad that something wasn't normal about his house seemed to at least convince him I wasn't making it up, lol. 2 or 3 weeks ago he called me on the phone. Had me on speaker. He recently had his girlfriend and her daughter move in, and they were complaining to him about knocks and footsteps while he was at work. He tried to tell them the house is haunted, but they thought he was bullshitting them, so he called me to be his resident haunting verifier. Gotta love him. I could deal with the walking back and forth outside of the door, but when you told it to shut up and it starts running, nope. Not lived in a haunted house, but stayed at our old house during some travels. Stayed there for 4 days and noticed some creaking and stuff. Old house, so it is to be expected. The second day, first morning, we heard the entrance door open and then slam shut. Okay, cool. Probably the owner that needed something. We were sitting in the living room, so we turned around to look, but nobody there. We went to check the door, and it was as locked as it was when we went to bed the day before. Nothing else interesting happened until the day we were packing and about to leave. I did one last round to check that we didn't forget anything, and as I was about to leave, I approached the main entrance, saw a shadow or something similar move fast across the floor. It went straight through where I was walking, knocked the wind out of me for a few seconds, and suddenly I felt extremely cold. Mind you, this was a 30°C day. Safe to say I left quickie. I hope you enjoyed these terrifying true stories. Make sure to like, comment and subscribe for more.